Hello, and tonight we're talking all about mental health. Now, as you may know, here in the UK, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. Now, if you've been following our journey, you'll know this is something very, very close to our hearts, and it's something which I'm super keen to highlight with our work. So tonight, I'll be looking back on the stories and issues we've highlighted in the past. Plus, I'll be chatting to some friends to see how our perceptions of mental health have evolved over the years. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, or if there's something you can especially relate to, so do pop it in the comments or as a message and I'll respond directly on the live stream to you. So I first started exploring mental health as part of the One City One Light project in 2016 when we went to Romsey. Now at the time, awareness campaigns in the media around mental health were just starting to be on trend. And for me, I didn't really know what to expect, and I hadn't really understood how wide-ranging the subject would end up being. Now, one of the places I started off was at the Tree of Life cafe in Romsey, and I shot a short video about the cafe in order to raise awareness about the work that they're doing. So let's watch that now. As part of the Light, I've been visiting and talking to local people here in the community in Romsey. In particular, I've been to the Romsey School, where I've talked to students about what darkness and light means to them. I've spoken to the mayor, but I've also spoken to people at a very special cafe called the Tree of Life. It's situated here in Cafe Nero in the heart of Romsey.
It was about looking at the concept of recovery within mental health, which is about helping people to build a meaningful life regardless of the symptoms of mental ill health. What's really worked is that it's a public place, it's part of the community. So for many people who have been struggling with their mental health, it's been a real lifeline.
I mean, the Tree of Life came to be because actually we were asking the question with the NHS, with the mental health services, how do we create that space? A place for people we know that spirituality is part of that recovery process, or can be. So how do we create a space where people can access that? And we had great ideas of using our church rooms at one point, and I wanted to turn the Abbey into a sort of cafe, and this would be the safe space. But actually what we recognised is that we needed a neutral venue. That even buildings like this, however hospitable you want to be, they do carry with them, for some people, kind of weight and history, and that often for some people isn't that great. So we went to Cafe Nero's and we just said, please can we use the upstairs? And they were more than happy for us to cordon off a bit of it and to use it. And again, even in there, you can find your own safe place.
And we're here also, we're not just here for people who are struggling with their mental health. I think one of the things that is really important to us is recognising that mental health is on a spectrum. You know, it's important for all of us, every single person is somewhere on that spectrum of well-being.
Sometimes you watch people come upstairs really nervous because they're anxious about kind of admitting their need of help. It's a really hard thing to do. We're all meant to be successful and fine. So people often come upstairs, nervously see us, and it's as like they're kind of circling before they're landing, like a kind of flight path. And so they'll come up, look around, go downstairs again, pluck up courage again to come upstairs again, and then sit down. And then they've found their place. Others can just come straight into it, others come and go, others for it's a weekly lifeline, for others they just sort of come in and out, others just want to talk, some people want signposting. But I think what we found is that actually you can be sort of anonymous in a place like, a coffee shop.
So one of the key things that I take away from that video is when Vanessa says that mental health is all about being on a spectrum. And I think that over the past few years, our understanding of what mental health is, what the issues are that relate to mental health, and potentially even the way that mental health has been defined has been changed. So I'm here today with Josh, who's an actor and musician from London, and I know is a big advocate of mental health. So hi Josh, very good evening and welcome to the live stream tonight.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Josh, I'm wondering, what does mental health mean to you now in 2020?
It means to me, well, it's a very, very important topic matter. I think in terms of what it means to me, I think you have to talk about it. I think it's something that you should share with others. Especially if you are in a dark place, or you're in a place where you are confused or anxious or low, whatever it is you are feeling. I think, yeah, it means to me to talk about your feelings and your thoughts with others, with loved ones, or whoever you feel you can trust to chat to.
Brilliant. I mean, tell me, how did you first hear about the idea, or this idea of mental health as a topic?
I'd say it was probably in my mid-teens. I started to become more aware of others at first that were going through it. Family and a few friends. And then I sort of got to know its importance as I got older. I'd say around 19, 20 years old was when I really realised how important it is as a subject matter, due to fellow family members and friends, but also in terms of what I went through at that time as well. And then since that time, when I was about 19, 20, I've since, understood its importance and carry on to push how important it is to focus on and talk about.
Brilliant. I mean, Josh, do you mind if I ask you maybe to talk a little bit about your personal experience with mental health? Because I know that's played a big part in how you see it as a topic and how you see mental health in general.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I am someone who is fairly extrovert and does openly talk about my feelings. However, in terms of what I went through when I was, 19, 20, I think a big thing about it was I wasn't fully being honest with myself with how I was feeling, and it took quite a lot of time to really come to terms with that and actually realize how I was feeling, if that makes sense. Because I would have really, really dark days. I'd have times when I would chat to close loved ones, and it would be beneficial, but I wasn't always being honest with what I was saying to them. And it wasn't until later where I sort of really, found the courage within myself to come up and say how I was thinking and feeling, that I then started to feel the sense of release and benefited from that. Because I mean, looking back at that period as well, it taught me that yes, eating healthily and exercise, getting good sleep are important factors to mental health. But from my own personal experience, I think the most important thing is to talk about it to others. Because I mean, for me, in terms of how I see it, you can obviously, you have the cogs turning, you have your thoughts and your feelings, and you have your own voice in your head. But for me, it isn't until you actually put it out there and you speak it that you then fully realize how you are thinking and feeling, because it's then a spoken thing, that it's not just in there anymore. It's out there. It's being said. Oh, okay, that actually is potentially how I'm feeling and thinking. It's not just something that's in my subconscious or conscious mind.
That's really good to hear, because as we'll talk a bit this evening, stories and putting things out there is I believe as well, it's super important to how we look at mental health and how we do take it forward. I think that you're absolutely right in saying there's something very, very important about, saying to someone how you're feeling and then putting it out. Josh, as you went through that period, how do you think your perception of mental health changed? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Definitely. I think my main thought with that is everyone's got their own personal journey, and it is a completely legitimate one, whatever it is, however you're feeling and thinking. I don't think it's healthy to run away from those thoughts and feelings, but also to feel ashamed or feel that they're not wrong, that they are wrong or shouldn't be there. I think it's good to understand that you are unique in your own special way. We are all individuals. And I think you can trust that whatever you're going through it's a legitimate feeling and thought, and yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, going forward, Josh, what I mean, we've talked about being open and putting feelings out there. What do you think is the most important thing going forward for mental health and developing that and going forward with how we deal with mental health issues?
In terms of my journey with it and talking about how I only sort of became aware of it in my mid-teens and then really came aware of it when I was like 19, 20. I think it's an awareness younger on. I think schools could be a really, really good platform to put into the education system and make students aware, make children aware of it and its importance. I mean, it's incredible what is happening with it now, but I think there's still a lot more work to be done because there is still a lot of people that are going through, as said, these personal legitimate stories within themselves, but aren't reaching out to other people to get help and to hopefully better themselves. Yeah, so I think there's a lot more work to be done, but it is exciting what it has happened in recent years. I mean, I've done shows in the past that have works towards this amazing charity, Calm Zone, who work, with mental health and have a support service, and they are an incredible charity. So yeah, but anyone watching, if you haven't heard of Calm Zone, do check them out, and they are, a brilliant charity.
Brilliant. Well, make sure that we find the link and put that in because it's great to highlight. And as it feels to me like one of the things that we have to keep doing is kind of keep raising awareness of those different pockets that you can go to and to reach out to. And I know that's been possibly one of the difficulties with like the lockdown situation at the moment. But can I ask how you've found the last few weeks and do you know of other people that are maybe finding similar, finding mental health put under pressure a little bit over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, this as a time is a real prime example, I think it's going to be of a test of our strength because, personally, I am finding it really tough. I think it's the first time in my life that I've felt really up and down with my thoughts and feelings day to day. I can start the day feeling really up here and sort of in control and being like, okay, everything's going to be all right. And then at the bottom, the next few hours and worrying about the future of the world, and also the industry. It's, I think, a big thing that's been playing on my mind in recent weeks is the anxiety of what is to happen to the arts industry and what is already happening, with on the news about these theatres that are at risk of closing. That definitely is playing into my mental health. I think it's important to stay optimistic, and I think also as creatives, as artists, we tend to be quite optimistic people. However, it is very scary, and not in terms of the industry as well. In terms of, I think, everything, the whole world, what is going on, it's really, really tough for a lot of people. And I think, like I say, it has been up and down, but also I am very privileged. I've managed to come back home and I have a garden, I have loved ones around me, and I know that it is been helpful to remind myself and sort of, because it has felt insular and I have felt trapped, but it's also good to sort of step outside of myself and think of the reality of it, be more of a realist at times and think, wow, yeah, I have this, I have that. I am lucky with what I do have, and there are many other people who are not, not as lucky as I am, and are probably having a lot tougher time. I mean, there's just so many factors that it's affecting, that then as a result affects people's mental health. It's a real test. And yeah, I think it is really good in terms of timing that this is Mental Health Awareness Week. And the fact that we are still stuck in our houses, which is, a real test for people's mental health.
Brilliant. Well, I really appreciate you coming on tonight, Josh, and sharing those thoughts with us. It's great to see you again, and great to hear your thoughts on that. So really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, cheers. I mean, up next, we'll also be talking to artist and actor Lucy Yates about her art and how she used it to help with her own mental health. But first, I wanted to go back and share some of the stories that we gathered over the years, talking to people about what darkness and light means to them. Now, just before we do go over to see these stories, do be aware that we are going to talk about some sensitive subjects, and we will touch on some sensitive issues. So if what you see does resonate, please do reach out. We'll pop some organisations into the comments there down below for you to reach out to if you need to. But here's the first part of a two-part series of conversations from Romsey.
Light, it's interesting. It's really happy. I mean, whenever you see the sunrise, I especially get up sometimes just to see the sunrise.
Okay, some days it's grey, that's not so good, but some days it's really bright and it's crisp and you can see the amazing colours.
Without the light, I wouldn't really know where to go. I wouldn't know what direction it is.
It means there's something there. So it's like life.
They both have to exist for life to be able to exist.
Lights it up and you can just see all the details of people's lives. It's like everybody's equal, but in their own sense different. So no one person is equal, but everybody is equal.
I hope for everyone to be equal and equality.
So for me, bullying is really like the darkness of your life, and light is when you actually find a friend who stands up for you.
This person opened a box and out came all these dark, evil spirits like fear and things like that. And then she closed it, and then later she opened it again and out came hope.
I'm hopeful of things like maybe the world being peaceful.
Hope. That's actually quite personal because I have an autoimmune condition called ulcerative colitis, and there are periods of flare and remission.
I hope that the world never ends. Mum and Dad had a divorce, and we moved. Me and my mum moved away to live on our own. And I remember coming home every night and she'd be crying down the phone. And it was awful to come home to.
I mean, I have some horrible memories. I've visited 6 different psychiatric units to see members of my family.
And when I found out that my granddad had cancer, both of them have got it, and I just lost hope.
I remember Bridget's eldest son ringing me the next morning to say Dad's taken his life, and very, very difficult.
So for me, having these conversations, and these very open conversations with people, was a really moving experience. It's really staggered me, to be honest, how open people were and how much people wanted to share with me, even though they were strangers. Now, speaking of sharing, earlier today I had a bit of a chat with artist and actor Lucy Yates about what mental health means to her and her artistic practice. So let's go back to earlier today and see what she had to say about it. So hi Lucy, it's really great to have you on the live stream. How you doing?
Hello, it's great to be here. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, we're not too bad down here actually. It's great to be honest. Getting to meet all sorts of different people on this, so it's that's really fantastic. I hear you're you're currently studying at E15, which is one of the top UK acting schools. But you're also an artist, and you've got some of your paintings that I've got them in front of me. So maybe we could have a look at those now. Maybe I could ask you a bit about the background of where this has all come from.
So the project, it started when I was doing my A-level, back quite a few years ago, and I'd been given a project and I was drawing some fruit, and it was really boring. I was like, I'm not a fan of this, not enjoying it at all. And somebody planted the idea in my head, like, oh, what if you do food and people? Because what my real specific interest was like drawing people and the human form. And then I did a series of photos where I went into the little photography studio that my college had, and I threw some cake at my friends and got them to eat it and got them to eat fruit and things like that. And this really great set of photos came out, and there was a real sort of visceral quality to them that made me very, very excited. And it kind of developed from there, and it became this sort of obsession with food, and it's a very sensory project. I love food, I love everything about it. So it kind of came from a bit of personal intrigue and this little spark, and it was only really several years later, when I've been working on these paintings for years and years and years, that it suddenly like clicked what it really meant to me, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean, as you know, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and I'm wondering if there's what part mental health plays in the way that you've come up with these images. Is there any background there that you could tell me a bit about?
So, basically, the whole reason why I started painting was I really struggled with my mental health as a teenager, and it was when I started drawing and painting that I found it was a real sort of therapy for me anyway. And the way that I think my mental health manifests in this project in particular, it relates to so much with my personal relationship with food, how I struggled with my body image and how I felt about food, because it was this really like thing that I've always really, really loved. But then I always used to have quite a negative attitude towards it and be like, oh, well, I hate the way this is making my body look and everything like that. And it's kind of like an uber, very on the nose expression of that, really, because it explores the whole human relationship in general with food. And I find it so interesting. It's such a compulsory relationship. It's the only, I think, really, really utterly compulsory relationship that we have in our lives. Because you can effectively choose to have a relationship with your friends and family or whatever. You're tied to them, but you don't have to have that. But without food, you can't live. So everybody has that relationship, and it manifests in so many different ways. So it's sort of an exploration of that, and why food becomes such a strange thing to some people. It can become a fetish for some people. It can become something that really negatively impacts your life. And it's just such a varying thing. I find it fascinating. That's where it sort of comes from.
Brilliant. I mean, in terms of mental health, do you remember a time that you can kind of go back to when you became aware of this idea of mental health?
Yeah, I think when I got to high school, very early on, there was a real pandemic, that's what's going on at the moment. No, there was a real epidemic of mental health issues in my school. So many people were struggling, and I went to a school where there was quite a heavy academic focus, and there was a lot of pressure put on everyone. And suddenly everybody around me and in my circles of friends were struggling with a whole host of mental health issues, self-harm, so much of that, and I became very, very aware with it. And I struggled with that myself when I was about 14, 15, that kind of age. So that was when it sort of really hit its peak, and I suddenly became hyper aware of what mental health was. And since then, I've been aware of it in myself and in other people, and I'm really, really passionate about looking after and maintaining our mental health.
Brilliant. I mean, how do you think the sort of perceptions of mental health have changed over the years then?
It's interesting because it seems that there's so much more awareness of it, and then the problem seems to be getting worse as well. But I don't know whether that's just growing up, but I think people definitely have a better understanding of it. I mean, in the 1700s or whatever, women were put into prisons and stuff for hysteria, and mental illness wasn't even recognised as a valid thing to be suffering from. So in that way, it's so much better understood, and it's progressed so much. But I still don't think it gets the attention that it needs, and it gets the funding that it needs. And there's so much more that needs to be done for awareness and making sure that people are looking after themselves, especially now social media has come around, and the world's quite a difficult place to be, I think, for a lot of people these days.
How much do you think, just a final question, how much do you think arts and culture has to play in that role of raising awareness and helping people through mental health?
Oh, so much. Art, honestly, this sounds really, really cheesy, but art saves people's lives, because it's so important. Self-expression is one of the most important things that you can have. And whether it's watching somebody else's self-expression or doing it yourself, it's something that is so intrinsic in society, because art is like, it can be therapy, it can be catharsis, it can literally be anything. It's so important. I can't even put into words how important art is in maintaining the mental health.
Brilliant. Because I mean, certainly, I know that's something that has helped you through your mental health and driven you through that, hasn't
Definitely.
it?
Yeah, for real. I think it can help everyone. Okay, it might sound a bit conspiracy theory. I really think that if children are allowed to express themselves freely and creatively from a young age, it gives you so much more mental space. And whether you're like naturally creatively inclined or not, no matter what you're doing, like the work doesn't have to be good. I don't think there's such thing as good art, but it can do so much for you at such a young age. That's why they have like art therapy classes, because it's so good for you.
Brilliant. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for being on the live stream today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and well, best of luck with your future artistic creations. And
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Great.
So that was a really interesting conversation to have with Lucy, and I'm really grateful to her for coming on and speaking to me about that. It was great to see the connection that she has between her art and her mental health as well. Now, if you do want to see some more of her paintings, please go onto Instagram. They're really, really cool and evocative, so go and check her out. I think the description or the title for Instagram is on the description below. Now, mental health can often be quite dark for people, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So let's go back to the stories from Romsey and see how people dealt with their situations.
But on that afternoon, I found him, and on that afternoon, I can remember the words that came out of my mouth, which were, something has to be done.
And I remember driving there thinking, what on earth do I say to this person? And Vicky and I got in the house, and through my brain was thinking, I need to say something comforting. I need to do something comforting. I need to, as it were, bring light into her darkness. And you know what? We sat there, and nothing came out of my mouth.
I just found it easier to let it out, and my family had helped me to get through it.
But I've also had some great times visiting people in psychiatric units, and some of the most sensitive, lovely, funny, fantastic people are in there as well.
And I went to see her a few days later, feeling completely inadequate because I hadn't said the right things. And the first thing she said to me was this: "Do you know, Tim, what you said was so helpful," which was nothing.
So it really did hurt me, but now, like, I've got a bigger sort of light, and I've just made, like, a whole entire new start.
I've had the illness for 9 years now, which seems like a long time. But I don't let it resemble who I am. The saying that got me through everything was just, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Once it's over, and you've got through that dark period, and you don't have to continue with it.
I feel like the dark part was when my parents did split up, but the light was my mum finding a new person, and I was just happy for my mum. She's happy again. That was the light for me. That was the new hope.
Slowly, turn the light back on. Yeah, it's gone off. That Saturday, it had gone off. There was no light in that house. It had gone off. But over the weeks, the months, the years now, the light is back on. You look at Bridget, you look at the kids, the grandchildren. Phenomenal. The family pulls together.
Kind of encourage them and give them a hand when they need it.
I've been very lucky in my life. I've got a very supportive family. And I've seen through my 34 years in education, there is no such thing as impossible.
There's always no need to feel that down about yourself, because there's always a positive near you or someone next to you who's a guide or a source of light.
And they said, well, do you want to sit somewhere quietly? No, we want to sit where we are, and we want people to talk to us. For goodness sake, this is bad enough. Please don't turn away from us. Please don't cross the road. Come and speak to us.
Bringing light into darkness begins with sitting with people in the darkness and saying, it's okay. We can spend as long as you like here in the darkness until they are ready to say, do you know what, I think we might be able to make a little bit of a move here, or actually something that you might say, or the manner in which you say it is just brings a bit of light into a situation.
Even in a small and comfortable town like Romsey, I think can sometimes feel very confused and very lost. And we need to be a town where people feel safe to come in and know that they've got safe refuges if they need it.
So after talking to all these people, it's really made me start to understand just how wide-ranging and personal mental health can be. And I think one of the main reasons for this is that mental health is somebody that nobody else can see. Nobody else knows what's going on inside of your head apart from you, which is for me why stories are so important. Often we're not always able to explain something well. It's not always possible to kind of quantify feelings, thoughts or experiences into words. And anyway, everyone's experience is different at any rate. But when you realise that when we all see colours and shapes and sounds differently, then it's not really that hard to understand how radically different our personal journeys are. But stories provide an insight. They allow people to learn from the experiences of others. They allow us to understand why somebody did what they did. And they also allow us to imagine what might happen if we did something similar. But crucially, they allow us to relate to each other, and that even in dark times, there can be a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why I believe it's so important that we should share them. Now, we've got one final story for you tonight. Now, Lydia wanted to remain anonymous, so we replaced her with the voice and images of an actor. This video was also shot as part of the Romsey series, so let's go back in time and hear what Lydia had to say. As part of the project, I had the chance to speak with Lydia. She'd taken time off work recently. I asked her if there was one thing that she'd like to tell somebody about her experience of mental health in the workplace.
For people to be open about the medication. The medication I got, I was put on because I was having anxiety attacks. I was getting to the stage where I couldn't come to work. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I didn't want to go to work, and becoming very bad-tempered and seeing the worst in people, which isn't me at all. And then when I'd been to see the doctor and he'd prescribed this medication, I thought, oh well, that's great, I just need to start taking these pills. And another neighbour of my family said, don't take the pills, don't take the pills, you just have to work through it. Work through it, that's what I did. And I'm thinking, no, I'm going to take those pills. And then she kept texting me every day to see how I was. But the doctor did apologise afterwards. They admitted to tell me that to start with they would exacerbate the symptoms, so actually I felt worse for the first few days and was having these awful attacks where I couldn't even get out of bed. For about half an hour I was shaking and I just couldn't get out of bed. And when I went back to see him a fortnight later, and also these particular tablets, they affect your digestive system, so I didn't want to eat anything. And then when I did eat things, the results weren't very nice, without going into technicolor detail. I think people need to know that. And you know, I had said to the doctor when he prescribed these things, am I going to be addicted to these things? Because if I'm going to be addicted, then I don't want to go on anything like that. And he said, no, you won't become addicted to them, but you will have to be on medication for 6 months, and then we'll start taking you off. Well, the 6 months is up at the beginning of January, and I made the appointment to go and see him to start coming off them. And I don't know how that's going to work, whether reducing the medication will bring back these horrible, horrible anxiety attacks again or not. It's not something I'm looking forward to, but I trust him, so we'll see what happens.
Too often still people feel frightened, ashamed, embarrassed to say that they struggle with their mental health. Employees worry that their employers won't understand it. What we want to do is to work with employers and employees to say this is okay.
Triangulate's role within the Romsey community, where there are hundreds of small businesses, is just to make people like myself that little bit more aware and to not be scared of that situation.
At the heartbeat of what we say is that we want you to talk about this. We want this to be a place where it's okay to talk about this. We won't try and fix you overnight, but we'll give you that space, that light, to be able to help you in your darkness.
So the thing about Lydia's story and many other stories like hers is that mental health, and in particular in her case depression, can be diagnosed and it can be treated, and the reason that she wanted to share her story was to raise awareness of that fact. Now if you diagnose and treat, then you can also solve the problem, and you could also explain to your employer why you're off work. Now of course every case is different and not every case is straightforward, which naturally has presented a wider problem in the workplace. It really depends on basically how understanding your boss is, and even then their hands might be tied. But hopefully by raising awareness and by sharing stories we can develop understanding, and then the structures that we need to support each other will be created off of that. I thought I'd just take a quick moment to have a look through some of the comments that you guys have been posting on our live stream tonight, and I've got a couple here actually. Let's have a look. So I can see that Leanne has said, "Thanks for posting. It's great to get people talking." And Leanne, you're so right. This is the whole point of what we're doing here. It's basically we're saying let's talk about it and put it out. So to be honest, what we've said tonight, I just hope creates something that gives you that excuse to go and talk. So even if you don't find anything that's of use within what we're doing tonight, at least you can create that and go and speak to someone and open up that conversation. I think that's so important. We've had a couple of messages as well from a couple of pages. The page on Facebook that said, it's called "I'm Fine, Mental Health Awareness and Support" says, "Thanks for posting, it's great what you're doing." So thank you for the support, that's really appreciated. And Enhance with Natalie says, "Wow, thank you for sharing. And also we've got a comment from Sal Sebastian who says cool smiley face and a little heart symbol, which is really nice. So thank you for sending those in. Like Leanne says, just go and talk, and like Josh reiterated at the beginning with my conversation with him, it's just great to go and talk and to get out there. So if you're sat at home worried, anxious, or for whatever reason just caught up in your own thoughts and feelings, do make sure you reach out to someone. Now, I did say that we popped some of the organisations that you could do to that in the comments on the post. One of the logos you'll have seen in the video is Triangulate. They're a Romsey-based charity, so reach out to them if you're based in that area up in Hampshire. Josh mentioned Calm Zone as well, so do have a look for that link and have a look there. I think it's really, really good to go and find that. So huge thank you to everybody that's commented. That's absolutely fantastic. If you have liked what you've seen tonight, do make sure that you like our Facebook page, because that will mean that you can stay in touch with us. We can keep you in touch with future projects, music features that we're doing, and potentially if we find out about something that's really cool and could impact and help start that conversation, we'll of course share it here. So do make sure that you hit the like button on One City One Like on our Facebook page. If you don't want to find us on Facebook, you can also find us on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. So if you're on one of those platforms, make sure that you jump across and hit the like or subscribe button on there as well to stay in touch. Otherwise, it just really remains for me to say a huge thank you to both of our guests on tonight's show, to Josh and Lucy, for making our One City One Light Spotlight feature happen tonight. Really appreciate the time they've given up today to come and talk to me. So I've been your host Richard tonight, and look forward to seeing you very soon. Have a great evening and good night.